board also. Yeah, I was also at the Kiwanis breakfast, although I didn't see you there. We must have just never. It was a pretty crowded place. So.
We're the book fair for a really long time.
Okay. Yeah. Which my kids told me that was going on as well. So yeah, just a lot of different events going on with the schools. So just trying to keep up with as many of those as we can. That's about it.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I had a few just updates. Mostly, I was actually planning on sharing these, and then you asked several questions that were exactly what I was trying to share. So I figured I would just go through a couple of planning items for the next several months for the agenda. First off, we're working on our communications plan for the next year and sort of the the budget situations that we find ourselves in. And so I understand there is a draft of that going around right now. In its very early stages, but I imagine you all will see that in January sometime for some comments. I'm probably going to have it on as a discussion item where we would discuss the plan itself and then elements of the plan that we would want to do, like further listening sessions or specific communications or anything like that. So just kind of be, noodling around in your brains. What makes sense, and then really, divisional labor and stuff, and we can talk all about that whenever we review the plan. So if y'all have questions for those items, just save them till then. In those vein, I sent out my community update article, which we had discussed kind of as a first implementation of that. I think Dr. Maxwell and I are working on a joint email to staff, probably going out this Friday. That will be a similar vein but different tone. With similar information, right? So just read the draft, I'd say, and just let me know, if there's anything that you see that's like missing or suggestions or anything like that, and we'll try to get them into the email. But in the sense of just kind of like trying to reuse our content and writing stuff and trying to be consistent. And so I'm imagining once we get a plan in place, it'll be a little less ad hoc, but I'm trying to just like kick it off this December before we go into break. Next is the superintendent evaluation. And so I too went to the WASDA conference. I attended a session on superintendent evaluation given by Cindy, who came to do our training, and Amy, who is a board director in North Shore. And so it was a great presentation. I could tell that the ideas for their policy governance superintendent's model is much more developed than it had been. I found out that 14 other school districts have used this process already, but they're all much larger than us and had consultants involved in the process. And so WASDA is trying to standardize that approach and basically remove the need for the consultants. And so part of our agreement, and I spoke with Cindy last week just to kind of shore up our timeline and such, but part of our agreement is we're going to try to pilot this for WASDA to see really how it works and mostly give feedback, right? But the basic idea is there's two models to superintendent evaluation that WASDA recommends or recognizes. One is the standards-based model approach, which we've conformed to pretty closely to standard. I mean, they summarized the idea in the presentation as 2 to 3 standards per year, pick some artifacts that are deliverable, and it was language that you would find in our policy, right? So I think we're pretty close to the standards base, but I know that we all found some issues with it, right? So I think trying this new idea could possibly have some benefits. The new idea generally versus standard-based is called policy governance-based, and so you as the board, we would rewrite the policy for the superintendent evaluation and incorporate different policies, strategic objectives, and sort of personal development goals for Dr. Maxwell that he would then present to us throughout the year, right? So like, for instance, this could look like, maintain curriculum adoption schedule in the, published in the curriculum policy, right? And so then we would receive a report, and we'll come up with a schedule beforehand, so you'll kind of know when each report is coming based on what we select, right? But yeah, the general plan, and I don't want to go too far into it, is on January 8th, which is our next meeting. I'm hoping in the interim to work with Dr. Maxwell to have a draft policy with some recommended policies, strategic objectives, and personal objectives that we can put in there as an initial kind of draft, right? Then we can get feedback on whether y'all think they're the right ones, or we want to use different ones, or how we want to go forward. And then in January 22nd, we would hopefully vote on the process and then start implementing it from there, right? And so what that should look like is I'll rewrite the policy to basically say each time we get one of these presentations, and we'll just use the curriculum schedule as a good one, right? So Dr. Maxwell gives us a presentation on how curriculum adoption is going, what the plan is to keep it on schedule, is it in budget, all of these other things. And then we as a board will vote very quickly on just whether we find that satisfactory towards the completion of that goal, right? And if we don't, it's on us to then provide, this is what we would like to see for that to be satisfactory. And if it is, we just record that as that one's in the books, right? And then at the end of the year, when it comes evaluation time, we just summarize the votes from all of our different presentations and discussions, and then construct the evaluation based on those votes, right? And so all the evidence is already there because it was given in presentations. If there was any feedback needed, we gave him questions, and then he would give us more information when it came time. And so that's the nuts and bolts, right? And so I haven't, worked out all the details. But basically by January 8th, I'll have a draft policy. Once we get a look at it and get some feedback, I'm gonna send it to WASDA. And they're gonna give us some feedback by our next board meeting, as promised. And so once they get feedback, I'll bring it back on the 22nd, and hopefully it will be at a place where we can approve it. And if not, we can do another round of edits and revisions. So, and I don't want to get into too much discussion because it's a report, right? But just let me know, mostly just send me an email if any of this sounds bad, or like you don't agree with it, or want something different, or really just have suggestions on the initial draft of the policy, right? Like stuff you'd like to see. If there's particular policies we have that you're like, oh yeah, I definitely want that one in there. This would be a great time to hear that kind of stuff, right? Because then I can make sure it's included. And then, okay, I think that is, yeah, I think that's it. Cool. All right, Dr. Maxwell, I'll pass it to you.
All right, thank you very much.
So, sorry,
Oh, yeah, what's up?
just to clarify on that, so you want us just to provide feedback on, because it sounds like you've determined that our evaluation is gonna be policy-based, not evaluation.
Oh, no,
Or
we're not. So that's for y'all to determine. So what I'm gonna do is present a draft policy. Because
Right.
right now, we're under our old policy, and so that's how we're working, right?
Yeah, I understand. I'm just saying if the board would prefer a standards-based policy, like I don't want you to go to all the trouble of drafting up a policy-based evaluation. If among the board, we would prefer to continue with the standards-based.
So I was
Evaluate that,
proceeding
so
under the
that's-
direction to kind of beta test WASDA's model, right? And so I think that's a worthwhile endeavor. But we can't really decide on it until we have something to discuss, right? So I think we'll have to get through that initial drafting regardless if we want to try something else, because we don't really know what it looks like. And so if we draft it and decide that we don't want to do it, that's fine, honestly. I mean, like, I'll pass the draft back to WASDA, and they can use it for whomever else wants to, like, test the process, right?
Because, yeah, when we were discussing that previously, we didn't know their model was gonna be policy-based, right? You just said we could use theirs, but we just barely found out now what theirs is even gonna look like, so.
Oh, yeah, no, and no, this is not, just because we're looking at the policy is no, like, decision that we're gonna use it. So when the letter comes up in January, for instance, it will be based on the old process, right? So like artifacts, evidence, standards we gave in June, et cetera, right? The goal is to move to something different in February, but if that's not what we're working on now, we would need something different to move to. So just keep that in mind, like if we do want to do something else, I'm gonna work on this one, right? But like someone else is gonna need to do that by January. And so, yeah, just let me know how it goes. When we talk on the 8th, we'll probably know more, right? But again, if we don't get it done in January 8th and the 22nd, I'm not sure what we would change our current one to, other than just continue to use it, right? But no, those are just some initial thoughts, and thank you for the clarification question, I appreciate it. And again, we'll discuss several times. Like I said, I am very interested in what sort of policies you all would want to evaluate the superintendent on, what sort of strategic objectives, for instance. Looking at the strategic plan, What sort of, things like you were mentioning with communication, what sort of things would you like to work on as far as, like process or tone or quantity or planning or, like there's various. So I would just say kind of spitball ideas, and then if you have them, please send them over, and then if not, we'll gather them all up on the 8th. So, are there any other questions, just real quick? Okay. And sorry, I didn't really mean for that to be a lot, and then we talked earlier, and I kept getting things to add to my update, so that was quite a bit. But anyway, Dr. Maxwell, all you.
Okay, so again, just a couple things that were mentioned, but just want to reiterate, the pancake breakfast was well attended. Really liked the format this year. Student performances, those started early, were spread out, and kind of kept the crowd at a nice pace and plenty of seating where it wasn't all overloaded at one time. Although I think the high schoolers were a little tired showing up at 7 a.m. to do performances, but they were great. I have not yet heard how much they raised, but also shout out to the administrators put together a basket again this year, and the theme was baking, and it was a great basket. I'm not sure what it went for, but so that was fun. Also, I had a chance to attend PHS Boosters auction earlier in November, and found out yesterday that they made about $42,000 on that on that night, and that was very well attended as well. I think there were 174 tickets sold and quite a few auction items. So it was a nice event up at Schweitzer Event Center. So also this week had a chance to talk with Pullman Education Foundation, and so I've been talking with their exec committee, and then we talked with the board Tuesday morning. And so I was throwing out a proposal to create kind of an endowment fund within PEF to help supplement the operating costs for the aquatic center. And so they were very amenable to that. And so next step will be setting up another meeting with the city, and also talk a bit about what kind of campaign we would launch to kind of encourage people with that. So more information to come, but just want to keep you up to date on the latest that's occurring with that. So still a lot of questions and still a lot of things to be answered, but we're working through those one step at a time. So a lot of pieces to that. So let's see what else. I have two different sheets, so I gotta make sure I'm covering everything. Also, last week, had the opportunity to join 58 other superintendents from ESD 101 to meet with legislative representatives from Eastern Washington. And so we had a really nice half day of getting a chance to talk with them, more than just 3 minutes. So that was really nice. Every one of them knew about the big three that we've been talking about, which is fully funding special ed, full funding transportation, and funding MSOC's materials, supplies, and operating costs. So they were all aware of it, they all know it, and so that was some good conversation. And there was also some problem solving and some ideas tossed around to help maybe adjust some of the legislative bills that we know are coming. And so it was a very, very productive day. I'll be going back over to CTAC January 11th and 12th for the legislative. It's not called the Day on the Hill anymore. They changed the whole format, so
It's very confusing.
it's going to be very interesting. So I don't know what to expect, but we're 32 days away from the start of the legislative session, which is going to last 105 days, maybe more. It's pretty rare to hear them already talking before they even started about maybe going longer, which I hope is not the case, but sometimes you hear that rumor. But it's pretty early to be hearing that. So anyway, a lot of work going on with that, and so I've already created a presentation to talk about where the state is at, where the federal proposed federal administration budget impacts might be coming. So I'll be going around with all of you to staff meetings in January. So watch your email for those calendar invites. If you can't make one, we're going to ask you to try to switch out with somebody else. So yeah, so I think I'll leave it at that.
Cool. Any questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, next we'll go to program reports, and I'd like to invite Kelsey Winningham up with her team to present on the Jefferson Elementary School Showcase. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. So tonight with me is part of the Jefferson Building Guiding Coalition. So on that team, we have a grade level representative. Everyone on the Building Guiding Coalition participated in our presentation tonight, but not everyone could be here, but a good majority was able to be here to present to all of you. So when we were trying to decide at one of our last meetings what we wanted this December showcase to be on, we talked about a few things, but we ultimately felt like it was important that we share with you the book study that Jefferson's Building Guiding Coalition took part in last year. I wasn't with them last year when they took part in it, just kind of got there for the tail end of it. And it was somewhat inspired from when Jefferson went to the National Title I Conference and got to hear various speakers at that conference. And one of the speakers, or a couple of the speakers there, were Kathleen and Bill. And so after, did you guys actually end up talking to them there? Did Jim talk to them there? Okay. Big surprise there, I know. But former principal of Jefferson, Jim Bruce, he talked with them there, and so then there was kind of a connection established, and so then he reached out to them, and the Building Guiding Coalition took place in a book study where they also had the opportunity to learn from the authors that they, Nikki and Sandra, got to meet at the Title I conference. And so the Building Guiding Coalition took part in that last year with the idea that then this year we would have our whole staff participate in the book study. And so if you want to go to the, oh, you told me I have a clicker. Next slide. Okay. So the purpose of the book study, over 50% of our population, so we looked at the Washington State report card. Last year we were at about 58.6%. So of the JS student population qualifies for free and reduced lunches. As I said last year, they participated in 2 books, so turning high poverty schools into high performing schools, and then this disrupting poverty, which they felt like was a good one to do with the staff because of the applications and the takeaways of the strategies that could be used in the classrooms. To also learn about common myths about poverty and challenge some of our own stereotypes about families. And then, like I said, a lot of really great strategies. So one of the quotes that we wanted to start with was that poverty disrupting educators create classroom cultures that mitigate the usual or expected adverse effects of poverty on students' learning. So one of the things that we wanted to bring tonight too was a book for each of you. If you want to, we're already almost done with the book study with the staff. We'll finish at the end of January, but Kathleen and Bill have generously agreed to participate via Zoom on our January 16th staff meeting. So any of you that want to, you're welcome to join our staff meeting that day. It's at 7:50 in the morning. But they're going to be with us on the 16th, and then we'll wrap up our whole book study on the 30th. So Craig, if you want to take one, you can pass it down. There's one for Amanda, and then Bob, there's one for you too. Roberta said she already had one. So yeah, we're going to share with you some of our favorite quotes from the book, and then some of our key takeaways.
All right, so I'm up first. Sorry, my voice is not great today, so I told Kelsey I'd volunteered to read a lot of it, and I texted this morning. I'm like, we're gonna have to change that plan, I think. So I'll see if I can make it through my part at least. I'm Tricia Domet. I teach 4th grade at Jefferson, and I'm on the Guiding Coalition as well. And my favorite quote was about building relationships and the importance of that. So it says, building caring and trusting relationships between you and your students and among the students is your first most powerful strategy for successfully teaching any student, but especially those who live in poverty. And I chose this just because I feel like that's like the first step. We can't really dive into all the academics until students feel like they're in a safe space to learn and to take those risks that they need to be able to take both socially and academically. So the book gave us a few strategies for how to do that. And one of the ones I liked the most was just that everyday interactions make the difference, that the greeting when they come in, the follow up on, oh, hey, how did your soccer game go last night? Those kinds of things that it shows them that we care, we're invested in them as people. Viewing the parents, families, and caregivers as a resource. So one of the things I do at the beginning of the year is a survey to parents and asking them to let me know, what are some ways your child learns best? What are some things that they enjoy doing outside of school? Ways that I can hopefully help connect and get things going right off the bat to a good start for the school year. And then throughout the school year too, hey, I noticed they're really tired. Can you tell me how I can help at school? What can I do to help support you and your child? And seeing what resources and ideas they have. Being there for students and providing a network of support. And one of the ways they really said to do that is to provide that sense of community for students so that they feel like they have kind of that extra extended family, and how important structure and routine are to these students, because that sometimes is a piece that's really missing in their lives. And so having that predictability makes that space feel safer.
Hi, I'm Sarah King. I'm third grade at Jefferson, and I'm also on the Guiding Coalition. And I'll be sharing Kelsey's quote tonight and my quote. And we really focused on high expectations and stereotypes and biases and how that affects student learning. And Kelsey put, high expectations matter more for students of color and those who live in poverty. Be compassionate and caring, but also firm. Don't lower your expectations. And then the quote I found was, what we believe about ourselves as educators or students and their families is deeply coupled with our sense of responsibility for teaching. And that ties into our preconceived notions, our biases, and what did I say? Stereotypes. And some ways that we worked in Guiding Coalition was really look at our own biases, our own stereotypes, our own backgrounds and histories. And here are some suggestions to hold yourself accountable for student learning. It was to focus on what you can control. We can't fix everything, but when they're with us, what can we do? Be open to critique and willingness to learn. Find an accountability partner, so that would be somebody in your team or in your building. Let students know you won't give up on them, and I feel like that's one of the most important. Consider yourself on the same team as your students, and also to take risks.
Okay, so this one was Penny Zimmerman. She's our kindergarten representative for Building Guiding Coalition. And she tied her quote to our belief at Jefferson, which is our Kids at Hope stance on things. And so she said, our expectations of our students are fundamentally concerned not with the present, but with the future. They're a reflection of the potential we see in each student. And so again, she talked about this idea that we really want to time travel with our students. One of the things that we believe at Jefferson is that all children are capable of success, no exceptions. And one thing that I've challenged our Building Guiding Coalition on, and we've had, some really good conversations on, it's one thing to say that we believe in all kids, no exceptions, but it's another thing to walk that talk every day, and make sure that kids know that we believe in them no matter what. And so one thing that we do a lot with kids is time travel to their future, right? So like, where do you see yourself? Where do you want to go? So making sure that it's, relevant for what they're doing in school. Not only do we want our students to see the future, we need to help them reach their future goals. We had a student the other day write down what he wanted to be when he grew up. And so the teacher took that, it was just on a little piece of notebook paper we ripped out, and she put that in her office to remind him, like, hey, this is what you've said. Because the first thing she said to me because I worked with her on it, she said, can I make it all like pretty for him? And I said, yes, but make sure that we keep that original piece that we go back to and that we refer to say, hey, these are your goals. How do we help you get there? And then again, we need to give them the tools and believe in them, especially when they don't believe in themselves. I feel like that's what we see a lot, is just that lack of self-confidence that they can get there. And some of what we see there is generational trauma, generational poverty. And so how do we help them break that cycle so that they can succeed?
So when I was thinking, Nikki Wolf, Core Plus teacher at Jefferson. So I was really fortunate to be able to go to New Orleans and get to see them, Bill and Kathleen speak, and then we got to go. They studied the high poverty, high achieving, high-performing schools from all over the country, and we got to do a breakout session with one of the schools they studied, and the speaker was Alexis Sorden from Concourse Village Elementary School in New York, and this quote was the one when I just think about over the 2 books and the conference and all the things, it just has really just grabbed me, and it said, "We need to infuse literacy at all times, at all costs, into all content areas, because second only to safety, ensuring that all students develop literacy skills is a core priority in HPHP schools." And so of course, I'm the literacy teacher, but it just really was like, wow, we need to like catch this on fire. This is what we need to do. And so another quote from the book that grabbed me was that there can be no social justice without addressing academic achievement. And so when we were in the book study and we're like, okay, we're on board. We believe you. Any school, we can do this. But where do we start? Like I said, we've got to get the safety under control, but then they said focus on literacy. Literacy is that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, basically. Because reading is the gateway skill to other knowledge, as well as to self-confidence and self-efficacy. And when students don't learn to read by 3rd grade, they will likely struggle in every class thereafter. So in order to empower our students to achieve their life goals when they're time traveling, we have to give them the knowledge and the skills that they need to be successful. So I don't know, we all hear about that. The planning where I think, Craig, maybe it was you that first told me that states use 3rd grade reading scores to plan their prison. And I think that's still a fact today. And so it was just kind of that, like, this is real, this is urgent, and we need to do it.
Hi, I'm Nikki Deely. I'm the school counselor at Jefferson. I also have a little bit of the voice thing going, so bear with me.
It's going around this year, right?
It is. So I'm going to read a quote on behalf of Anthony Haynes, 5th grade teacher. "The educators who disrupt poverty understand there is no neutral space in this work. Studies demonstrate that most teachers stick to their own classrooms in terms of their social justice-oriented practice, focusing primarily on creating a supporting learning environment. Nonetheless, it can often be difficult for individual educators to tap into their moral purposes for any length of time without the support of their colleagues and the system itself." Anthony said, "This aforementioned quote came from the final chapter in the book, Having the Courage and the Will to Take Action. The authors communicate the importance of individual courage eventually manifesting into collective action." For my quote, I selected one that stated, "Students who live in poverty and underachieve may have a fixed ability mindset and have learned that they would rather misbehave, passively resist, or give up quickly than look stupid." One of the reasons I really liked this quote is because when I read it, immediately several students came to mind where I could see them and some of the behaviors that they're doing. Their behaviors it's a form of communication. And that's something that's really powerful in my work and something that I remind myself on the daily, that especially for our students who come from poverty backgrounds, mistakes become crippling when they have these fixed mindsets. Even thinking that a task may be difficult can lead to choosing to not even try, because they'd rather not try and succeed at that than fail. And then on top of that, the student will often choose to look good at whatever they're doing, even if it's unexpected, like rolling on the floor or throwing things around, in order to avoid looking bad or stupid at what is expected. And I just found that really powerful, especially in my realm of what I do. I have the privilege of getting to see so much in our school that not a lot of other people get to see, but I also get to advocate for those students and get to kind of share that behind the scenes view.
Hi, I am Sandra Casanova, and I teach 1st grade at Jefferson. I have also taught Title I, which is one of the reasons why I was able to go to the conference and learn a lot. And I was inspired by the fact that we know that there are schools out there that have high poverty, but yet they can achieve at high levels. And we expect the same thing out of our Jefferson Elementary School. I want to read a quote from Jill Patera. She's a 2nd grade teacher at our school. And both of these quotes have something in common, and it is that we need to change our mindset When we think about poverty, we think about lack of something, and we forget to look at what people bring to the table, what we bring, what our students bring, their strengths, their gifts, our own strengths and gifts. So these really resonate to that theme. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permissions to do the same. So this is for us as well, when we think about what we have to give to our students and what we can draw out of them. And then, this is my quote, questioning our assumptions enables us to adopt a resilience perspective rather than the predominantly held deficit view of students living in poverty. It also focuses us on the assets that students who live in poverty bring to the table, which might be the most essential ingredient in the effective relationship recipe. This final part speaks to belonging and accepting someone for who they are. And you cannot have a strong relationship with anyone unless they feel like they belong and like that you accept them for who they are. They don't have to be someone who they are not. And then to finalize and conclude, this quote is towards the end of the book, and it is followed by the line, "It is within each of us that disrupting poverty begins." I see this as a charge and a call to action. We have a sense of urgency to do something now and disrupt poverty to make a real positive change in students' lives. It will take courage and a willingness to be vulnerable as we look and reflect on our own mental maps and stereotypes. But if we have to, and if we have the courage to do that, what we can, look out. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for the book. I love free books, and I can't wait to read it. It sounds really good. Are there any questions from the board? No?
Maybe just a comment.
please do,
I
yeah.
love the relationships first attitude, that just expectations aren't going to get you where you need to go, but the relationships along with the expectations are what is the key to the whole thing. So I appreciated that.
It's a good thought. Great. All right, well, thank you
Thank
all
you.
for coming this evening. Back to my thing. Okay, and next, I'd like to ask Jill Bickelhaupt up for the CTE program Perkins grant approval report. Wait, I thought, no, you're fine. Sorry, I was talking to Bob. I apologize. Because we put the Perkins, is that the same Perkins grant as went into the,
She's gonna do a presentation on the district-wide plan, but the application's in the consent agenda.
okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I knew what was going on, so thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Jill Bickelhaupt. I'm the CTE director. I'm just here to give you a little kind of state of the union for CTE and talk a little bit about Perkins, because you have that application in there for approval. So I just wanted to start out by kind of talking about CTE and some of the requirements and goals of our programs. So as we know, CTE teachers have a lot of requirements for their programs above and beyond what happens in most general education classrooms. They're aligning with both academic and industry standards and all of our curriculum, equipment, all of those great things, as well as incorporating 21st century leadership skills, which are kind of those employability skills, which time after time in talking to industry partners and whatnot, that's the thing I hear consistently of what they need from kids going into careers. Like, they can teach them some of those other things, but those employability skills, those are the things that kids are really seeming to lack going into careers right now. They also are maintaining, each program has to maintain their own advisory committee. Those advisory committees help to assist, advocate. They help to advise, help look at growth plans, 4-year goals, program evaluations, all of those fantastic things. Our teachers also are required to maintain intracurricular career and technical student organizations, our CTSOs, which is like our DECA, FFA, FCCLA, Skills USA, and those are both required to be incorporated into our classrooms as well as provide extended leadership opportunities outside of the classrooms. So those would be like our community service projects, competitions, all of those things that our groups do as well. And then our programs are all required to be reapproved every 5 years, although a little caveat on that with our current director of CTE that was just hired at OSPI within the last year. They're kind of reevaluating the reevaluation system. So they're, for the second year, not doing that reapproval process and putting out verification reports like they did last year. And then in addition to those things, our programs help to fulfill graduation pathways, provide CTE dual credit, provide IRCs, which are like certifications, and also provide opportunities for cross-crediting for core academic subjects. So I'll talk a little bit more about updates in those areas as well. Before I get to some of the nitty-gritty, though, I did want to kind of highlight some of the amazing things that our CTSO groups have already been doing this year. Up in the top right corner there, we started off the year, this was the first time we decided to do a CTSO officer training. So we brought together our officers from all of our CTSOs, got together before school started, talked about what it means to be an officer, you know, how kind of best practices in interacting with your groups. We brainstormed at ideas. We talked about service projects and whatnot that each group was doing throughout the year and kind of put them on one big calendar so we could make sure, like, not stepping on toes, figuring out how we can support each other and kind of team up on some of those. And then afterwards we went out and did a bunch of weeding out around the school, just to clean things up a little bit before all the students and staff came back. So that was I really enjoyed doing that this year, and I think that's something that we're going to try to continue doing. Our FFA group went to nationals this fall. They participated in several service projects there, as well as did a lot of leadership academies and whatnot. They've had their state potato judging competition already this year. Throughout the year, they'll have about 15 different competitions that they'll participate in, and then that'll culminate with their state competition in May, when we have the influx of all the corduroy jackets in Pullman. And our DECA group, they are growing massively. They're up to 75 members this year. Already this year, they've done a Mitten Mania event, blood drive, bracelet initiative down at the elementaries. They just earlier this week did their Dig to Donate event. So lots of great service activities going on. And then last week, they also went to their regional competition, where they had 31 of their competitors qualify for the state competition. And then they have about 20 more kids that are working on the 20-page papers to turn in that they can also qualify for state with. So our FCCLA group has doubled in size this year from last year. So they're at about 30 kids. They again have a state officer that just got back from November exec meeting. They last weekend volunteered with the Moose Lodge down at Gladish to put on the kids' Christmas activity party. So that was lots of fun. And then this weekend, they'll be wrapping presents for the Giving Tree at Gladish. And then they have regionals in January, and we have kids competing in 9 different events at regionals. Our Skills USA, they're kind of divided into three different areas. We have our STEM section, our media section, and our metals and construction section. And they also have regionals coming up in January. And so they are looking in each of those 3 areas to have about 2 to 3 teams participating in that regional competition. So that's really exciting too. All of our CTSOs are growing year after year, especially within the last few years. I think this post-COVID, their kids are getting excited about things. So, and then down at the middle school, they previously have done TSA for their CTSO down there, and they've kind of had mixed with that. So they decided to try something new this year and did what we call leadership equivalency. So it's all the same things as a CTSO, but it's just not under the umbrella of one of the organizations. And so they decided to call it Tech Expo. So they're getting that up and going, kids participating down there. So lots of great things. Sorry. To the nitty gritty here. A few changes in CTE this year. We hired Tanner Ferry as the shop teacher up here at the high school, and he's been a great addition. Have heard fabulous things from parents, from students. We're really excited to have him, and he's been really fun to have in our department. He's teaching all the woods and metals classes. That position went back to a 1.0 position from the 1.2 it was last year. One of our family and consumer sciences positions went to a 0.8. The 0.2 is not renewed for this year. And then down at the middle school, we did a lot of work last year to add in a couple courses as well as kind of rechange and restructure a few courses to better align. We've really been using a lot of the Project Lead the Way curriculum down there. We use some at the high school too in the STEM program. But the kids have really, I think, loved that. It's very hands-on, very interactive. A couple of those pictures, I know they're dissecting sheep brains. So, and then they were going on to analyze those sheep brains and figure out what medical diagnoses to give each of those individual sheep. So it's pretty impressive what they're doing down there. And I think the changes have really helped to invigorate that program and do a lot better job of aligning with what we're doing at the high school in the STEM program. These are a few of our kind of general stats for CTE. Just kind of looking at our enrollment, we're at about 47% of the student population at the middle school and just over 70% at the high school that are involved in CTE courses right now. So lots of kids are in CTE. That kind of gives a breakdown as well of some of our special populations, gender demographics, and some of those racial demographics as well. Our CTE completers, which are students who've taken 2 courses in the same program area. The data for 23-24 is not available yet, so we're still on the old one there. So, just kind of overview of the classes we're offering at each school right now. So at the middle school, like I said, we've done a lot of kind of switching around, restructuring of classes there, and that's been going really well. Digital design is one of the new classes that they did, and she's got 3 sections of it there. So I think kids are really excited about it, and we're excited too. At the high school, it's kind of business as usual in terms of course offerings right now. We didn't have any new courses we added in this year, a couple that switch off year to year, but we're kind of in the standard for what we offer up here right now. So graduation pathways, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but as we know, CTE can be an alternative graduation pathway that a lot of kids use. It can be used like most often people are using it instead of state testing. It's a really great option, but it encourages kids to look at, okay, what is your career goal and what are the classes that are going to help you get there? So previous to last year, we really only had those pathways within program areas. So we worked really hard last year to look at, okay, where do our programs cross over? Like, what careers do we have here? If you take a marketing and entrepreneurship class and put it with your digital photography, if you want to go into commercial photography and have your own business, like that's 100% a valid career pathway. So we really have a lot of different options. We added 17 new pathways in last year that cross between programs. And then at our general advisory committee meeting earlier this month, we approved 6 additional pathways that we're going to submit to OSPI. So lots of really great options for kids, and lots of kind of focusing on, let's make sure what you are doing or want to do, you are getting the tools now to get yourself there. So yeah, that's exciting. And I love how it shows how much our programs kind of intertwine and cross over each other as well. Dual credit was another area that we focused on a lot last year. We were only working with Walla Walla Community College, so last year we reached out and started working with community colleges of Spokane. With them, we added in 7 additional dual credit courses. We also have another one in the works with Walla Walla Community College right now that's pending approval. So currently we have 15 articulated courses, hopefully soon to be 16. So lots of options for kids to start getting credits that will help them, again, with those future career plans and what they want to do post-high school. We also last year set a 3-year goal, or 2 3-year goals. One was to offer at least 1 dual credit course within each of those graduation pathways. So not only are you focusing on, these are the courses that are going to get me there, but you're actually gaining credits towards getting there. So at this point, we only have 4 pathways that are missing a dual credit option within them. So getting close. And then we also had the goal of working with community colleges outside of just Walla Walla across the state to increase those options. So like I said, we're now working with Spokane Falls and Spokane Community College. And then we'll look to expand that further as we get some of those other dual credit options for those other pathways too. Industry recognized credentials. So when I talk about the CLNA in a minute, this was one of the things that came up several times was industry recognized credentials, those certifications. We really want to make sure that we are offering those certifications to students that are valuable in the industries that they want to go into. So last year, we had the Washington State Food Handler, we had ServSafe Manager certification, and the OSHA 10 certification available for students. And so we've already started looking at our general advisory committee, and then we're breaking that out into program advisory committees for those to look at with those industry partners. What are the certifications we can put in our classes that are meaningful in your industry? Because we want to make sure kids have those options, even if they don't want to do dual credit and go to a 2-year university afterwards. If they want to go straight to career, let's give them a leg up there too. So we already have another IRC that we added in this year doing a EverFi financial certification in our career choices classes. So, we're going to continue to look for those. And then we also offer cross-credited courses, helping kids look at getting some of those core academic credits that they need for graduation in a different method. So currently we have 20 of our CTE courses at the high school that are cross-credited. Within those courses, kids can get credit in fine arts, lab science, math, social studies. So lots of different options that we're trying to help provide for kids. Drink a water before this. On to Perkins. So about 5 years ago, they added in the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, the CLNA, as part of the Perkins process. It's required for the Perkins application and is meant to help inform that Perkins spending. So our process last spring, we surveyed all of the students at Pullman High School to kind of get their feedback on CTE programs and what's going well, and if they felt like, curriculum and equipment was up to kind of standards and helping with their education. We obviously, as a CTE staff, have collaborated several times on that CLNA. They're familiar with the big chart and kind of going through all those different things to get feedback there. Then we sent out a stakeholder survey, or a survey to our stakeholders, which were our CTE teachers, our program advisory board members from all the program areas, secondary administrators, sped teachers, and counselors, just to, again, get that feedback, see where we're lacking, where we can improve, where we need to dedicate our time and money. And then after compiling all of that and the information from the survey, we took that to General Advisory Committee, and we discussed that as a whole General Advisory Committee and approved it there so that it's ready for the next step. So with that CLNA, this is kind of a summary chart. I believe as part of the Perkins application, you have the whole big CLNA document. And I'm not going to read through all these tiny little things, but a couple highlights for you of things that came up several times, both within the data that we looked at and within narrative that we got back from people. Non-traditional enrollment is one that's low, especially in our STEM and shop areas. So that's something we're looking to kind of do some targeted recruitment to help increase that non-traditional enrollment. Our test scores for ELA, math, and science are all below the school average. But what's always interesting to me with that is that even though our test scores are lower, our graduation rate was actually higher than the school average. So to me, that really shows how much kids are utilizing those graduation pathways and using that option to get to graduation, even though they may not be able to have as high scores in those testing areas. Like I mentioned before, our IRC offerings are on the low side, not at that state target yet, so looking to increase that. One thing that came up several times, especially in narrative form, is needing more support for students who are on IEPs, 504s, behavior plans within our classrooms. I will say that they've been able to increase the amount of paras we have here at the high school this year, and I think that has helped, but it's still a struggle in some aspects. And then it was also brought up both within our stakeholder survey and our teachers, the worry about, because of funding issues, not being able to have professional development. At least this year, not being able to travel to like specific industry professional development. You know, there's some areas, especially those that are high in tech, AI, obviously those are changing quickly. And so it's really hard to keep up on those industry standards without being able to get that information. So, and then also the worry of with the budget issues we're all having, being able to support travel for advisors for the CTSOs. It's fantastic. They're all doing so well, and we're so excited that we have so many going to state and national competitions, but it does create some problems for getting advisors there as well. So, this is just kind of a breakdown of where we have spent money the previous few years. Last year, there was a big bump. You'll notice much larger amount last year. And that's, they told us last year, hey, everyone's getting like this bump for Perkins. Don't expect it the year after. And the little piece of me was really like, well, maybe they'll just keep that there. That would be fantastic. But sure enough, it went away. So our Perkins amount this year is $23,977. So we talked about within CTE taking a break from our usual rotation between programs so that we could support some of those other areas with our Perkins funding this year. So one of the big things that we're going to use our Perkins on is that CTSO advisor travel. Like we said, that's a big concern, being able to support those students in those competitions and whatnot. So yeah, and those CTSOs are still a requirement, even though the funding is not catching up to help support them. So we're going to use a big chunk of our Perkins to support that advisor travel. Students, they pay for out of fundraising or support from their families. Industry recognized credentials, again, that's an area that we want to increase. So we're going to continue to pay for those this year out of Perkins funds so that we can allow teachers to even, like I said, try something this year. If we figure out it's not one that fits well with your class, if they go through it and we figure out not a great fit, then we don't have to do it again. But if we pay for it out of Perkins, it's not going to take away from your program budget, and you can still offer that certification. And then anything that's left over after those two, we'll do some evaluating and prioritizing of what do we need within across all of our programs to make sure we're staying at that industry standard for our equipment and curriculum. And then finally, just a little bit about some of the challenges, kind of our biggest challenges for our CTE teachers right now and where we're headed. So as we know at the high school especially, we're kind of in a decline and or plateau of population. So continuing to add in, maintain the options we have with that declining population, that's obviously a challenge. Health sciences is an area that we've talked about several times. I met with she was from the Washington Board of Nursing, talking about, hey, how can we partner like with Pullman Regional Hospital, but also how do we do this without taking away from these other areas or cutting other things? So that's definitely one of the big challenges. Another one that many of our CTE teachers are struggling with right now is maintaining our educational standards and safety in our classes that have a large population of IEP 504 behavior plan students. As part of the CBA for general education, IEP students are capped at 5 per class. There's no cap for CTE. So as an example, we have one class right now that in one period, they have 11 IEP students, 5 of those on behavior plans, in addition to 2 on 504s and 2 English language learners. So that's a hard classroom to maintain, and it's hard to get the individual attention each of those students needs to really be successful. In addition, when you're talking CTE, in the various programs, you've got knives, you've got fire, you've got saws. So making sure we're keeping kids and teachers safe in those environments too. That's a concern. And then, like I said, we already talked about kind of staying up to date with industry standards and what's being updated in those industries without that professional development. Yeah, so that's kind of the biggest things I would say are concerns for our teachers right now. And then future direction, making sure that our courses and pathways are emphasized to all of our students. I've talked several times about wanting to prepare students for every level once they leave here. If they're going straight into the workforce, if they're going to a 2-year trade school, if they're going to a 4-year university and beyond. So we want to make sure we have those options apparent to all of those students and that those pathways align with their high school and beyond plans. We want to make sure kids aren't getting forced into a pathway just to get a graduation pathway and that they're allowed to kind of change when their interests change. So that's a big goal of ours. Increase community and business connections. We've talked a lot about increasing our advisory board membership, some of those just to get more of those connections. The increase in work-based learning in our classrooms has helped a lot with that those connections within the community, and we want to just continue to grow those because they really play off of each other. And then increase opportunities for dual credit, IRCs, work-based learning, like I've talked about. And then, yeah, looking for more opportunities to offer options for core academics within CTE, you know, some of those more applied subject areas within our classes. So, yeah, that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, I would love to try to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions, Craig?
Well, it's not a question, just a comment. On your CLNA thing, I was impressed with, we got to see the whole list of all the people that were involved under stakeholders.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just impressed with the breadth of this community that fed into that document. That
Yeah.
There were a lot of voices went in there, parents, community, teachers.
Yeah.
Teachers, not CTE teachers, but teachers around the district's counselors,
Yeah.
all kinds of folks. So
Yeah.
it was very well done.
Thank you. Like you said earlier, we're very lucky. We have a very supportive community. So, yes, that's definitely an area where we see that willing to participate in those types of things.
Lisa, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just had a question about the slides that had demographics to see if I was understanding correctly. And we don't need to pull it up, if you're familiar with it, I remember, I think, but it was about just a lower proportion of students from low-income families participating in CTE programs at the middle school and high school, but especially at the high school. Is that?
I think is it lower or higher than the district average?
I believe it was higher.
Yeah, I think,
It was, low income was higher than the district?
That's what I heard you say.
yeah.
Let's go back to the numbers.
Oh, I was gonna say,
I was just curious what that was, because it's a focus for us
that was
this
it
year
right
of
there.
supporting students from low-income families, so I was wanting to make sure.
so, and actually, I was looking at this right before it, but I believe that the Pullman School District one is just added of the Lincoln Middle School and Pullman High School.
Okay.
So that's all CTE kids that you're looking at there.
Okay,
That's not compared to the district average.
okay, and so.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what is the orange on that one? Is
That's
the
the
lower
low
bar?
Orange is low income.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is,
CTE
So is it a
enrollment
subset?
overall, all, and then the,
yeah, just wondering if it's, well, I guess I was wondering, is that a subset of the, like, at the high school, for instance, is the 30% a subset of the 71%, or is
Yeah,
that
I think-
comparing?
I think if I may, so this is 100% CTE students,
Okay,
and of all CTE students,
like half.
29% of
Okay.
them
Yes.
are considered
Okay.
low-income students.
Okay,
Yeah.
So it's not looking like at a ratio of how
Yeah.
many low-income are taking versus aren't, it's just a breakdown
sure.
of all students taking 30%.
Okay,
classified.
good. That helps me then ask the question I actually wanted to ask, which is, do we know why the middle school and high school are different in that way? Is there, an opportunity gap, or, is there resources or barriers difference between those programs?
between the amount of low-income
Yeah,
students
just
at
wondering
each.
about why the participation of students from low-income families is different at the middle school than the high school.
I would say part of that is probably the offerings of the classes and kind of requirements of what students can take would be my guess. I have not looked specifically into that, but I can. You can definitely do that, do a little deeper dive on that and get
It's
back to you.
just- Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
it's not, it's just something we're trying to understand better this
Yeah.
year too, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely do a little more focused research in that area and get back to you on that, for sure.
Good question.
Yeah.
I did have a quick question as well. What are your thoughts on like outreach to like online students that don't go to Pullman but live locally to come take CTE classes? Because I know like if you're experiencing some sort of, we're stealing students from this one to do that one, what are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, I know we've talked about it, but like generally, right? And so, I mean, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I personally believe that students have more meaningful experiences when they're having them in person. So, I mean, being able to get some of those kids in for the CTE classes, I think would be a great option, especially if you're talking about those subject areas. Having taught through the pandemic, having taught a foods class through the pandemic, I can tell you that if you're taking those types of courses online, it's probably not giving you quite as much of the applied area of the, or applied curriculum, as we can do in person. So I definitely think it would be of benefit to students for them to come for CTE courses.
And practical too, right? Like, because that's kind of what I was wondering too, is
Yeah.
that like, would you think that would be difficult to kind of incorporate them in quickly, or just like, because I know like we've talked about trying to increase enrollment numbers for the high, you know, the high school reasons and whatnot. And like online students, their core curriculum is pretty standard and
Yeah.
good, but like they miss out on those opportunities
Yeah.
like band and sports and
Yeah.
CTE. And so I was just wondering, like, would it be worth maybe looking into how to, you know, I don't know how we would market
Yeah.
it to them, but like just being like, hey, come in and like take a wood shop class.
Yeah,
Or something, you know,
100%.
because you can't do that online.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So you like that? I mean,
Yeah.
okay, good. Because I don't know, I was just like, is this just we're forcing, you know, way more work on everyone now, or is it something that would be like you just fit in with everyone else? You know?
Yeah, no, I think I think it's a great idea, and like I said, I think it would be of benefit to those students as well, which is ultimately what we want.
That's the win-win, right?
Yeah,
there. Like, okay,
yeah.
cool. I like it. All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Those good questions. So, well, thank you very much, Jill.
Thank you so much for
Thank you for
having
all the
me.
hard work. Honestly, this is a lot.
Thank
Like,
you,
this is
Jill.
great.
Thank you.
Okay, and now I would like to ask Roberta Kramer up for the assessment result. Wait,
No.
Justin? Oh, sorry, I got cut off. No, you're good, Justin. The Transportation Services Report by Justin Polston. I apologize.
No problem. So a brief rundown of some transportation news in our report. But before I start though, just a quick thank you to our drivers, because if we don't have drivers, we really don't have transportation, and then we can't get our favorite people to our buildings. And so those are the folks that make it happen for us in the morning and after school. I have ridden a few routes this year as I continue to grow into this role, and you know these things, but when you get on a bus and see it in the morning, when the first person that a student sees is their driver involved with the school district, plays a big role on what they're getting from the driver. And, you know, I've even ridden our Head Start preschool route where the kids are small enough that we have to buckle them into the seats. Yes, yes. And just to be able to watch the interactions from those students and the adult driving the bus is really, it's really sweet. And I love to see that and watch our kids have those interactions and appreciate our drivers for being there and driving for us. So, again, brief, just want to touch on operations and staffing, and then our fleet. And I think for the most part, good news overall on all three of these areas. So for operations, our drivers run K-5 transportation in town. We're aware of that. Students, and for our students outside the 1 mile walk area zone, or if a student has an unsafe way to get to school, we make that accessible as well. And then, of course, also for our K-12 students, we pick up all, in rural routes, we pick up all K-12 students. And then our in-town students right now are running Pullman Transit for 612. And we continue to try to improve and build that partnership there. We do run a couple school-to-school, Kamiak to Lincoln kind of express routes in the morning as well, and that's been a success. We want to continue to build that as we move forward. We run 15 routes, 4 dedicated in-town elementary, 4 for rural, or excuse me, 4 routes for students with special needs, the route for our pre-K and Head Start development, and then 6 hybrid routes. Along with the operations, again, we go about 850 miles a day in our yellow buses. It's pretty good back and forth. In the morning, we get just over, on average, just over 400 students, and on the way home, just under 500 students on those yellow buses. And that's not including our field trips. So our field trips, just look at September and October, 37 in September, 42 in October. So besides getting students home, our drivers are getting students to different events. We just had a big DECA event in Spokane on Friday that CTE went up and was part of. They're doing middle school events back and forth to Lewiston and Moscow, and then of course high school is almost across the state for some things. I know I've got a couple kids going to Wenatchee this weekend for swim, so we're all over the place, going all over, getting our kids where they need to go. For last year, this past year, we were at just over 213,000 miles total, which was just under the year prior, and that's going to fluctuate with students we have to go pick up, different trips that we take, those things all add up, but it's still over 210,000 miles. For staffing, we have a transportation supervisor, and we have a mechanic. We have 14 drivers and 4 subs. You saw that we have 15 routes, so we use a sub every day. Thankfully, we have 4. Our mechanic and our transportation supervisor, we could say that they're substitutes 5 and 6, because they're driving very consistently for us as well. Our sub pool is a challenge, but we'll talk about the hope of being able to move that forward. We continue to recruit and train drivers. So we have 1 recruit ready to go. The last thing that he needs to do is take part in his test, and we're hoping to get that done this month so that he's ready to be our 15th full-time driver. Wonderful. We also have another 1 radio ad in progress, and what that means is early in the fall, Pullman High School students made that radio ad to go out to say, hey, it was the kids' voices. We need drivers. Here's why we need our drivers. Here's why it's important. Had a gentleman call me 3 weeks ago to say, I heard that radio ad. I think I could come drive for you guys. And we were like, all right, let's go. There's 1. Let's try to get another one. So the radio ad worked at least a little bit there. So he's in progress. He's working on his paperwork, getting things going. We also continue to cross-train. So we've got 3 maintenance folks that are going through the process of getting their CDL, and they, along with our hopefully new full-time driver, will be ready to go at the end of this month as well. So we'll have another full-time driver, which would put us at 15, and then add 3 more subs to that. That would get us to a very comfortable spot. So we're hopeful that that's what will happen. But in the meantime, though, if things were to stay where they were, there's a potential to limit certain trips and availability. I mean, you can see that with 14 drivers and 15 routes, someone gets sick, someone has an emergency come in, all of a sudden things get really tight really fast. So we're really hopeful that we can expand that and go. We want to stay away from those rolling cancellations that could happen, but we very much want to avoid that. For our vehicle fleet, we have 26 buses and 9 auxiliary vehicles. That's a wonderful amount. I had 1 person call in and ask, after we did the listing session, about, well, do we not have enough buses to do we need to do fundraising for a bus? Nope, we're good on buses. We have the wheels, we just need the people to get behind them. So if you look there at the fleet age, this is a tribute to what's been done in our past, which has built us into a really good spot. These last 5 years, if you look back 7, 8, 9 years, it would be a little bit of a flip. Instead of saying that we've got 73% that are less than 10 years old, which is wonderful, it was almost upside down if you look back several years. And so we're in a great spot right now with our fleet, which is wonderful. Again, buses, like everything, get a little more expensive. So it was $180 the past year. Back in 1920, it was $130 grand for a bus. We are continuing to work on electric buses. So we have 1 electric bus that we've had running for the last couple of years. Our 2nd electric bus showed up last week. Fancy, shiny, really quiet, wonderful. Pretty neat about the differences, just the technology in a short amount of time. The first bus that we got is definitely an in-town bus. This is what we got. It's good. It works for what we need, but we're not going to send it out on rural routes very often. This new bus, it got delivered to Spokane. It was a cold day, so they turned the heat on, which takes power, and they drove it down. So it's more like a 100-mile range in the bus that we have in this new bus. And so that goes into my last piece here is our partnership with SEL is that we are trying to extend what we're doing. So as you can see on the line above there, we have the 2 buses. We've got the grant approved for a 3rd, and then we're going to work on a 4th as well. So we're going to continue to add to the fleet with electric. The partnership with SEL, we met with them a couple weeks ago. They are all on board with trying to help us move in this direction, help us with grants, The transportation center that we have that's fairly new was built with the idea of having solar on the roof. And so that is a plan down the line, hopefully. Also, talking with SEL, we're talking about kind of a 5-year, 10-year plan of putting charging stations for buses at the high school. So a bus from Spokane, the technology will be good enough to drive that electric bus down, charge during the event that they're here for, and then run it back up. And then Spokane schools would do the same thing. So we can take our buses, drive them up, charge them up, come home. So just a way to extend that a little bit. So excited about that. Partnership again with SEL. They've been great. They want to help us do better. They want us to continue to grow this. They want to help us with grants. I'm really excited about that part, to continue to grow that piece. I feel good about where we are with our drivers. Hopefully at the end of this month, we've added a handful more, so we continue doing all the great things that we do for our kids, that our drivers, transportation department do for our kids. Any questions?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Has there been any discussion about the clay court stop going away?
Yes.
Can you update us on that, please?
Sure. So with clay court, what happened there was that clay court bus became really popular.
Yeah,
So
my
I'm gonna
kid's on it.
give you a little bit of background. So it's an in-town route. We have, Pullman Transit runs an in-town route that goes to a very close spot. And so that route is one of the routes that I talked about earlier that's a school-to-school route. It goes from Lincoln to Kamiak. And what's happened is students had found out that I could get home a few minutes faster if I jump on that yellow bus that ends up going out to be a rural route. So it goes from Lincoln to Kamiak, picks up students, goes out to a rural route to drop students off. Buses can only hold so many kids. And so there were numerous kids jumping on thinking, well, that's a little faster to get home than riding Pullman Transit. The driver, to be safe, has to shut the door eventually and say, I'm sorry, I can't let anybody else on. Well, some of the people I'm saying sorry to actually live out on Kitzmiller Road or out further away, and so they don't have a way to get home. And so the idea there is, okay, Clay Court, there's a way to get home to Clay Court from Pullman Transit that's a lot easier than the student that's out on Kitzmiller Road. So the conversation there with the school and transportation was to remove that afternoon one for now, because it was such an overload of students that were taking that a little bit easier route home, and let them ride Pullman Transit home. So I worked with the school to make sure that we had time for students to get down to the bus stop. So right now, school gets out at Lincoln at 2:50. Bus shows up at 2:59. So I knew that was tight. I went over and walked that route, pretending I had a trombone in my hand and was 12 and was looking, right? So it took me just under 5 minutes. So I talked with the school to make sure that kids could grab their stuff from their locker maybe between 5th and 6th period, so that when they had 6th period and the day was done, they could just head down to the bus stop to give them a little extra time. I also called Pullman Transit to ask, hey, we're giving them 9 minutes to get from the building onto the bus, and we're asking a few kids to take a new step because they'd been riding on the yellow bus. And so I asked them, I looked at their route, and they have a set of time where they leave that City Hall bus stop at 2:59, but they're at the transit station at 3:13, and they sit for about 12 minutes until they go on their next route. So I asked if they could maybe sit at City Hall, stop for 2 or 3 more minutes to extend that to more of a 10 to 12 minute
That's a good idea.
gap, and they were all for that, so that they would make that work. So that's the update on that right now, was the overload of students on that route, keeping students that really need that rural route to be able to ride it, and then so having those kids go back to city and then go from there. Now, our hope is that by the time we get back from break, we have another driver that can drive for us, and that might be a hot spot where we put that new driver, just to be able to run around back through there again to try to alleviate some of that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So the issue was too many students getting on the rural route that was going from LMS
To Kamiak.
It was never really stopping at Clay Court.
It was as a favor.
Oh, okay.
It was stopping as a, hey, yeah, we'll do this because we
okay,
kind of have
okay.
it. And then
Maybe
it was
that's where like as I was
can.
trying to read through it all and figure
Yeah.
it out, I'm like, wait, I didn't know we had a bus to stop.
Yeah. So it was to try to
It was
help
more of just
be
a-
convenient.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
concentration of students in that
Right.
one area.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
for
it
sure.
was sort of like, hey, we could just get them over there.
Yeah.
Got it. It was
It's-
just
Yeah, so the hope is get that new driver going, that might be a hotspot, we get the next bus going
Yeah.
too. Maybe the new electric bus going too,
Yeah.
so.
And that might answer my question on the next one too, because I had a number of LMS students telling me that they were being incentivized not to take that bus.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, apparently some of them said they were getting Spartan bucks for.
Yeah, for taking the city bus.
For
So
not
my kid
taking-
got Spartan bus
Not
for
taking
For taking the city bus.
yellow bus and taking the,
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, that sounds weird.
I heard several stories of pretty dangerous driving conditions. I mean,
Oh,
like, 'cause
yeah,
they
no,
were
no.
standing in the aisle, and there was
No,
three to a
can't do
seat,
that.
and they were
Yeah.
falling on each other, and so I heard several stories of, and I was
Yeah,
like,
no, no,
wow.
yeah,
yeah, we gotta get away from that.
Yeah, no, I understand it all, it's just like I said, I just was trying, and I appreciate you helping me
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
piece together all of these things that were going on,
Mm-hmm.
because I know, there are a lot of students over there in that, that side of town
Yeah.
that's really beneficial.
And just to add on to that, long-term, our goal is to try to add as many of our own buses driving our own kids as much as we can.
Any other questions? Oh, Craig, please.
Well, I haven't looked at the allocation model for transportation in probably 10 years.
Yeah.
But is there something being done for the kids less than a mile from school, the walking zones, the crossing guards, the other things that help kids get back and forth that aren't buses? Do you deal with that, or somebody else deal
That's
with
more from the schools specifically that deal with the crossing guards.
it? Right,
Yes,
It's like principal?
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I'm talking about, a mile away from the school, there's a crossing guard. And I don't know, I know we have some
Yeah,
volunteer
like on
ones.
Hall Drive.
Oh, yeah.
There's a
Right.
crossing guard on
Yeah.
Hall Drive.
Right, there is, but that's not a mile away that's less than a mile from
Right,
Jefferson.
because it's for the walking students.
Yeah,
It's
yes.
for the walking, but is that allocated out of the transportation budget?
That's a
Or
good
does that
question.
come out of
To-
building budget?
To
'Cause
my
that's-
knowledge, I think that's building.
No, it comes out of transportation. It's a transportation safety position.
Okay, okay.
But it's run through the school, though.
Yeah, the schools oversee where
Yeah.
there's a need for the crossing guards, but the actual position is charged out of the transportation allocation.
Okay,
So the charge is transportation, but we don't
You
have
don't manage
much,
it.
we don't manage that.
Right.
That's why I thought it all comes out of the school, because it's all, the interviews, the getting people in place is all done at the school level.
right. Because that only makes sense for a parapro at the school to take those positions. that
Especially,
is
you
location.
know those kids and all that
Yeah.
stuff, yeah, have those relationships, for sure.
Good question, Craig. I did have a question on snow warnings and whatnot with the
Yeah.
city buses. Do we have a plan for whenever they have to do limited service with the
Yes.
city to notify parents and whatnot as soon as
Yes.
possible?
So we did send out a parent square on that, and it was Rachel made a nice little demo of it, and it's kind of in a circular, kind of a clock motion of where we're gonna be and when. So in the event that Pullman Transit does have to go to their snow route, where it limits where they can get to, we've implemented a plan. We haven't tried it yet, because this is new, so we're gonna try
Haven't
this
snowed
year. If it comes to it, where we would run basically our own emergency route that would run kind of in a loop. It would start at Lincoln and run towards Sunnyside. So if I live on Sunnyside Hill in that snow area, which is right around where Sunnyside is, if I'm in 6th grade and I'm trying to get over there, I get on this bus and it takes me and drops me to Sunnyside, to that area. Then the bus picks up those students, elementary students keeps going, drops the students at Sunnyside, keeps going off to the next school. So then it would go off to Jefferson and do the same thing, drop those middle school kids off at Jefferson, and then off to the high school to drop as well for that area, but then could also pick up high school students and come back around towards Lincoln.
Do it the loop
So we'd do
again.
that loop, right? So,
Okay.
so that would be the plan, that what we would run is to run that loop around. And that would help alleviate those snow areas, so we can get to those buildings to drop students that were from Lincoln, and then pick up those students that were from the high school and get them back around.
That sounds a little complicated, but I wish you the best of luck.
Complicated plan is better than no plan.
This is true. I
Yes.
love complicated over, I don't
Yes,
know.
you're right,
Maybe
yes.
it just won't snow.
Or maybe it won't
Yeah,
snow.
exactly. It'll just, no, I want it to snow though.
I'm just
I want-
kidding.
And that is, so we have that plan in place, and I think we haven't really in the past, because it's a very rare day when we haven't done some sort of cancellation or modification, but Pullman Transit does. So, but just in case, we have that in place.
Cool. No, that sounds awesome. Thank you. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Just, I'm pretty sure the answer, but our 2-hour delays are still gonna match up with the city,
Yes,
right? Because they
Yep.
rotate on the hours.
yep, so we're good there still.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes they just, like, when the big berms pile up, the bus just won't go places for like a month. And then we're like, well, what do we, you know, like, you can't like make them all walk in the, because then of course no one's shoveled their, sidewalks either, and so it's
Yeah.
like kind of a mess.
Yeah.
But, okay, are there any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much,
Okay.
Justin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
And now, without further ado,
Now,
Dr. Roberta Kramer for the assessment results for spring 2024.
Okay, these are results that you have already seen preliminarily, and these are not disaggregated. So just know that they're by grade level, and it's really our district-to-state comparisons. So, first thing that we look at is just overall in ELA, math, and science, as a whole, as a school district, how we performed in relationship to this state in each of those areas. You can see that we are performing above the state in all 3 areas.
Oh my God.
Okay, then when we look at specific to elementary related to English language arts and our, the relationship between how we perform and that of the state, again, we're outperforming the state. With results that you've seen before. Okay, secondary, the same thing. I'm not sure why we have colors that are reminiscent of the Seahawks. I just realized
Oh,
that.
I think I know.
So here you can see too, we are continuing to outperform the state. I think that when you look, it's stark when you look at 10th grade. We are significantly outperforming the state. And I have spent some time, just when I can find a few minutes to do it, I want to I like to get into the data and see the comparison that other districts that I think would maybe be higher performing, and it's hard to find higher performing districts. I'm sure that they're small generally. Okay, so then this is elementary ELA. Again, results that we've shared with you in the past. This is, we're starting with Franklin, Jefferson, Kamiak, Sunnyside at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And then at the end are the state comparisons. So we have some areas that we are continuing to work on. Okay. This is secondary. You can see LMS is in the blue, PHS in the gray. Mathematics at elementary. This is the most growth I think I could tell you that I've seen in the state average in a really long time. We haven't seen this kind of growth in a long time, but it's good, that it's very healthy. And seeing that at 3rd grade and at 4th grade, and then there's some drop at 5th. At middle school and high school, you see that as well. Now keep in mind, our graph is going to, just to 70%, so you can see that middle school or 8th grade, we're up pretty high, and then high school dropping down a bit, but that's on its way up. We're very healthy growth there. Elementary, same, broken out by the schools. And just that fifth grade is, with the exception of one school, is a bit of a challenge. So we're continuing to work on that, providing that kind of support. We've also, we had done the adoption with Bridges, and now we've done Bridges third edition. Teachers' response is very, very positive. We're seeing, they've really appreciated that change. Okay, and then secondary in math at 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, and then again at 10th grade. So you can see it broken out. Middle school's running about at the same place, but I think the part that I'm the most surprised about is we've known what the standards are in mathematics for a long time. They haven't changed in a lot of years. I just surprised at 10th grade, only 29% of our students at the state level are meeting that standard. Okay, and then finally, we do the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science, and we do it at 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. The interesting part about this is that, so our 5th graders and our 8th graders, they all take a science class. 11th graders may or may not, okay? And so it always, that's a little bit of a, where are we going to land there? It's much less predictable, but still, again, we are performing well above the state average. So that's what I had to share with you this evening, right? Well, because, then this breaks it out by school, but, so you can see that difference too. So I do believe that was all that I had.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much, Roberta. Appreciate it.
I'll be back a few times.
All right, and then now, Human Resources Report from Dr. Maxwell.
All right, thank you very much. So, again, Dagny was unable to be here tonight, so I get to fill in as the HR person for you. So, we're continuing the similar format this year, and so we've adjusted it a little bit, but in the upper left, you can see the employee breakdown there. So you can see total number of employees, hard to see, a little arrow about 19 down. You have to remember that we had all that ESSER funding, and that's gone away, so that's also a little bit of a reflection. And you can see there where we might have gone down in particular, like administrators went down 2, but food service went up 1, educators went up 1, teachers or ESAs down. So again, just to give you a little bit of reflection of what went up, what went down, or what stayed the same. Also, you can see over active substitutes, that's really been a push, and we're up. Obviously, you can see we have 4 substitute bus drivers, as Justin had mentioned, 30 classified, 6 custodians, 2 nurses, and 71 certificated. And I can remember, I think it was last year, we were at 0 custodian subs. So we've made improvements in all but maybe certificated, but that's hard because it varies from month to month, so pretty strong numbers for substitutes, so I think that reflects that push that we've been working on. Just to give you a breakdown, certificated versus classified, so classified 42% of our workforce, and certificated is 58. You can take a look at the diversity, and that's one thing that we connect back to our plan. And so you can see that we went up in 3 areas and down in 2 and remained the same in 2 areas. So overall, I'm seeing a little bit of an increase, and that's pretty good, I think, given with ESSER funding going away and declining population and shifting of staff, that our employee diversities actually probably remain stable a little bit higher than typical. Also, we've included this, collective bargaining groups and contracts. So We actually have 3 that are going to be open this year, so that's going to be the Pullman Education Support Personnel, the para-educators and the PEA, the teachers. The only one not is the secretaries, because they took a 3-year contract the last time around. Then a little bit of recruitment data. So we had 608 applications, and that's up 18 applications. So that's pretty good in this workforce where a lot of people are getting no applications in some businesses and fields. So open positions, we had 91, which was down 43 from this previous report. Then there's a little bit of a breakdown on our applicant demographics. So you can see the purple there is white, kind of golden colors 2 or more races. You can see Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders, kind of that magenta type color. Ethnicity and gender, we include that just to kind of give you an overall breakdown. And then we include volunteers, and we've been tracking that. And of course, you can see we really didn't have any during the pandemic, but you can see a dramatic increase in the number of volunteers. We also are doing a better job tracking that with software in each building. So when volunteers come in, that they log in, and so that's really helped us get a better accurate count of volunteers and trying to be consistent across buildings using that system. So last year we found out not everybody used it quite the same about who was filling it out and who wasn't, but we're getting better on consistency, and so I think that's why you're also seeing some better numbers there. So, and then support services, new teacher training is a big part of that. The Best Mentor Program, which is they're just doing a great job this year, and Johnny Stevens, Natalie Walker, Natalie Dobbins. Am I forgetting anybody?
Annalisa Kibble.
Annalisa Kibling. I knew there was one more. Also, we're really focusing on social emotional training, special education training, which actually was happening today at the district office, ELA, English Language Arts, Mathematics, ELD, HiCap. And then really we're continuing to build that foundation of professional learning communities. And then, as you know, we're down to 1.6 TOSAs supporting, the entire district. And they're doing a great job, but they are busy people. And so that's 1.6. So they're doing a great job. But again, this mirrors the format we used last year, which is kind of a new format that we're trying out for your information.
It's very appealing visually. I like it.
Well, we're trying to make it a little, Dagny and I talked about maybe the applicant demographics, doing that a little bit differently in the future, but yeah, given that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? No? All right, thank you very much, Dr. Maxwell.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, and then that is the end of our reports.
You still got me.
Oh, yeah, no, that's item E. The reports were item D, correct? Yes, program reports. And next we will move to the equity update.
Look at that. Well done. The Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, just for brevity's sake, I'll say DEIB Task Force, has met 3 times. It's a very exciting group. We are meeting every month. Thankfully, Courtney is on the committee, and so has been able to reserve rooms and do things for us that makes the whole thing easier. This is a very connected, excited group. They're looking for their charge or the sphere of their focus. We did spend one meeting just going over the policy foundations of task forces and what they're supposed to do and how this all works, and they've taken it very much to heart. They have centered their discussions on the 3 things that we sent to them: review current events, activities, and materials on DEIB efforts in the Pullman School District. The principals put together nice lists of what they did in each of their buildings, and so we have a nice feel for what's happening out there. We've not talked a ton about 2, which is brainstorm ideas for community partnerships to aid students in need or to improve equitable access, but we have really dug deep into develop ideas on how to promote and create the context for DEIB, conversations among staff, students, and the community. Focused on some surveys, knowing that the CCE survey, that we do has a pretty large DEI component. Interested to see what that looked like. At our last meeting, we had some sample questions and what the last one looked like. So we're excited about that and talking about maybe on the off years, do a survey that we do, a JOT, what was it, a JOT something? JOT form, that's it. Like we did with the cell phone survey and those kinds of things. And so, but they are continuing to want to meet every month and furthering their work on all of those goals.
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Craig. And then just a quick question. When do y'all think would be appropriate to discuss further agenda items or to evaluate or review work that the task force has already done? That's mostly probably for you, but a few months, you think, or?
Yeah, a couple of months, because like I say, 1 and 3 we've talked about quite a lot. 2 we have not,
Okay.
making connections in the community we haven't talked about a ton.
Cool. I definitely want to make
We'll
sure
get
they
there.
have stuff to do. So just if
Okay.
it starts getting to where you're like, let me know, and I'm happy to put it on the agenda and we
Okay.
can throw it in there. So
Yeah,
yes,
perfect.
please.
Yeah, I think I'd like to leave some flexibility as things come up that we could maybe add to the agenda or change
Oh, yeah.
some of the priorities. And one that I would maybe suggest at this point is our communication plan sometime during the spring, if we're working on that we would also have the task force kind of review that for basically the concerns and any feedback or concerns within their area of expertise.
Oh, cool. Good idea. Yeah, we
Okay.
can mention that during the discussion of it and just see what everyone thinks and then, see what it looks like. So, cool.
Can I just add that
Oh,
the
yeah,
committee, that the task force is about half students and half adults, and so we get a really good view of the students' perspective on all of
That
this.
is awesome.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. I'm glad the students are teaching us. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much, Craig. I appreciate it. Do we have anybody signed up this evening, Courtney, to speak? Okay. Then I will forego the public comment statement. And we'll move to the consent agenda. To expedite business at a board meeting, the board approves the use of a consent agenda, which includes items considered to be routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the agenda by a member of the board and voted on separately. The remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. Does anyone have any questions about the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. We have no action items this evening, but we have a dearth of discussion items. So I'm just going to jump right in and invite Dr. Roberta Kramer up for number 3205, sex discrimination and sex-based harassment of students prohibited. Welcome
Okay.
back.
As you heard at WASDA, okay, there were changes to federal Title IX language. So that resulted in some changes to policy 3205. It changed the name, but more than that, the changes really exist in the depth in the procedure. So, and it's, and so now we'll have 2 separate procedures, which is unusual, but we'll get through it. One is to address investigations and related responses, and the other one is just related to the training processes and how we provide notice to our community. When we look specifically at the changes to the policy, you can see that it went from sexual harassment of students prohibited to sex discrimination and sex-based harassment of students prohibited. And then you can see that the changes, and they all are aligning with the federal law. Now, what we're also hearing is that that could change back again, but we're flexible. I've presented these before. You can see quite lengthy definitions embedded within the policy that might not have existed before. And then further outlines, I think clarifies some of the investigation. What I do really appreciate is when we get to section 4. It specifies the word training. And I think I think we can't underscore that enough. And when I was just looking at some things the other day, because we have to provide evidence that we have provided this training, and we exceed the training requirements. So I feel very good about that. And then to go on in section 4 is just outlining again what we need to include on our website. That is something we will be audited for at the end of January with the state. So questions that you might have that I could bring back responses to for the next time, or if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask me.
Any questions? Thank you, Roberta. And I believe you're up there still for 3241, student discipline.
So, well, I thought I was just going to be able to rattle it right off the top of my head and tell you when the last time was that we changed it. Oh, I guess just in February, but before that, the big change was in 2021 with some real substantive changes. Through some advocating by not just administrative groups, but lots of folks kind of getting their head around what had happened as a result of the new policies and procedures related to discipline, there have been some changes. And the changes, again, are around terminology, some of the procedures, and the classroom exclusions. And I think that it's improved the language dramatically so that principals do have, again, a little bit discretion, more discretion than what they had before. So when we look at the policy itself, it's not, if you were to look through, it's not real significant. There's some changes around development and review. It took out some of those requirements. We still provide, we work with our staff every fall, so we won't change some of our practices. But they did, I think that there was some reach that had happened at the state level when, they said that we were going to, as a district, we were going to support each school's PBIS, positive behavior intervention supports plans and some of that. That's what they do. That's really not for us to be telling them what to do or, so I'm pleased to see some of that change in the policy. And then and then again, it just kind of gets into what's much more a procedure, and that's in section 4 that's been eliminated. That's really procedure. So the procedure changes were they in this packet? Because I couldn't remember. Okay, yeah. So the procedure changes are a lot of rewrites because the state changed some of the coding. So there's pages and pages and pages of rewrites. But they're all things that we would do quite easily anyway. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can let me know and I'll be happy to respond. Okay?
See
All
none
right,
there.
I'm just going to stand over here.
Yep, that's Bob now with 3420, anaphylaxis, prevention and response.
Yeah, I got, this time I get all the medical ones. So as you probably are aware, because I know you read the policy and legal news from WASDA, and so back in October, just to refresh your memory, there were actually two, and I'm going to talk about both here, but policy 3420, anaphylaxis prevention and response, there's been some some changes, mainly it's expanding access to anaphylaxis medication. That's basically it. They're just expanding that access. And it was kind of exciting is there's also now going to be a nasal spray option rather than just an auto pen injection. So it's expanding that, and I think that's going to be very helpful for our staff and for our students. And that's really the gist of that one. Just talks about who may use it, current prescription, and there's a statewide standing order, which is significant. Before, we had to rely on a doctor's standing order for each and every student. Now there's just an automatic statewide standing order, which makes it way easier, and it probably should have been done long ago. But this will be a real help to our health staff and staff overall for providing aid when that need arises. So happy to answer any questions you might have, and if I can't answer them, I will get a hold of Michelle Hyatt, our lead nurse, and she'll be happy to fill us in. So
How does this interact? So those students that we know have these life-threatening allergies, do they provide also
they provide an auto-injector or nasal spray.
auto-injectors? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is, in addition to that, it's what we have on hand.
What we
just
have
to-
on hand, yeah.
In case some
For
random.
random scenarios.
Yeah, I didn't know I was allergic then.
Yeah,
I
and
got stung
and
by
we
a
also
bee.
have those for field trips, so,
Okay.
to take along just in case. So we do have backup. So there's
It's good to know.
differences among them, but the chemical mixture is pretty similar with all of them to a degree, so,
And then is there training required to go along with that?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there is training required, so.
Good question. Okay, you're doing opioid-related overdose reversal, number 3424
Yep,
next.
there we go. So again, this was in the WASDA, October, I believe, as well, Legal and Policy News. And this is emphasizing allowing students to carry Narcan without a prescription to ensure that during school and extracurricular activities, enhanced training for personnel, improved storage options. So basically, it's making sure that we have that medication on hand, and I will tell you, we have it. A year ago, it was only required in high schools above, or in high schools in districts above 2,000 students total, K-12. Now it's every school, no matter what your population is. So elementary, so we do have Narcan at elementary, middle, and high school. We also have Narcan in district office as well, and places. So again, it's to make sure that that's available, because that is one of the things that we're seeing, especially in Spokane County. They're seeing this a lot with students, unfortunately, overdosing. And so this just expands that option and use. That's one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that we have enough on hand, and we were able to get enough to have multiple sources of Narcan in the buildings. So this also would allow students to carry it without being penalized. And really, if you give Narcan to somebody, highly, highly unlikely it's going to have any effect in a negative way on that student. So happy to answer any question you might have on that.
Good, great.
Where do we store it at the schools? Is it with the defibrillators? Is it locked up in the nurse's office?
It's in the nurse's office, and some of the administrators actually have it, and school safety resource officer has on hand.
Okay.
Yeah, this came up last year as, an example of a little bit of an unfunded mandate from the state. Has it been expensive for us to do this, or?
We have managed to get all of ours free. So we actually, at the summer conference, there was actually a vendor there that was providing at no charge up to so many. And all of our building administrators that attended went by the booth several times. So they were very, very good about that. And Michelle has been able to also access free supplies. So we thought this might be an unfunded thing, and it is. It's not funded. We have to go out and find it.
Rely on charity is not a
We've
fund.
been, yeah, so we've been able to find it for free. We have not had to pay any money for the Narcan. So whether that will continue into the future, I don't know, but Thus far, we've been able to obtain that at no cost.
Is there an expiration date on how often those have to be?
Yeah,
cycled
I can't
through?
remember, there is an expiration date, and I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what it is, but I can find out if you'd like.
No, I was just thinking as it relates to, the policy, just how often that would be.
Yeah, Michelle checks every year because also the anaphylaxis medication also expires. And that also actually has I only know this because I know too much about it. I used to supervise nurses, there's also a temperature range that you have to keep those at. They can't get too cold, they can't get too hot, so.
Okay, any other questions? Nope. Okay, Roberta, you're back up with policy 55011, sex discrimination and sex-based harassment of district staff prohibited.
Okay, so 5011 is updated with the Title IX standards. Okay, so that's a change. We didn't have the Title IX language tied to this like we do now. So if we take a look at the policy, you'll see that it's all tied directly back to the law, every single point in it. And also, it expands the definitions. So if we were to go through every part of it, every piece of it is tied right directly back to Title IX law. So happy to answer any questions that you might have about that.
I see none. So thank you very much, Roberta.
Thank you.
Okay, and next, I'd like to invite Diane Hodge up for policy 6550, capital threshold for leases and subscription-based information technology arrangements.
This is the exciting thing tonight, guys. So, this actually goes with policy 6801, which is later on the agenda, but I need to explain 6801 in order to talk about 6550. The Office of Management and Budget has released an update for final regulations for the uniform grant guidance. It took effect October 1st this year, and the significant change was they increased the capitalization threshold from 5,000 to 10,000. So OSPI talked to districts and said we probably want to follow suit. And so we want to change the threshold from 5,000 to 10,000. But 6801 also ties to 6550, which is the lease threshold. And our lease threshold was previously, we can do a contract up to 5 years. So we take that one-year contract times 5 to make up that lease threshold. So we need to increase our lease threshold from 25 to 50,000. So we're just kind of following the new regulation. Any questions?
Seems pretty straightforward. Thank you, Diane. Okay, I'm going to flip my page. Next, Justin Polstead for policy 6600, transportation.
6600 transportation hopefully is fairly straightforward. It really focuses on who could and should be riding the bus and who should not. And so the could potentially is a student that has an infant, so that it says that it's okay for students to bring their infants on board and be transported. And then it also clarifies who should not. So policy addresses school bus trespassing. It's now a gross misdemeanor. If someone jumps on the bus, it should not be on the bus and causes a disruption. Those are the two main pieces of this update from WASDA from October, Senate Bill 5891. Happy to take any questions that I can get answers for and bring back to you at our next meeting. Yep.
For the infant one, does it state in there whether the student provides the child seat or the district?
From what I understand, that it's district, but I'll double check and make sure. Just because we're providing, for example, with our Head Start students, preschool, we're providing the booster seats for that piece. So I would assume it would be us, but I'll double check.
Yeah, just when I read through there, it didn't like specifically
Wasn't overly
state
clear.
one way or the other.
Yeah.
And what are the limits of infant?
That's a good question.
I don't know what
Yeah,
that is.
that's a good question. Okay, I can look at that as well. Yeah.
That's a good.
Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, how often in our district does the trespass portion come up? Like, will that affect us in any?
To my knowledge, not often has it come up.
They say, talk to them clay court kids.
Yeah, right, yeah. Give me a week, we'll see here.
It's pretty rare, but this law actually stemmed from a case out of the Tri-Cities where someone attacked a bus driver. And so they found kind of some some loopholes in that. So that's why this became a law. But I can only think of once before where we had someone get in an interaction with the bus driver that we had to call for assistance, so.
So pretty rare. No, I'll get answers to those questions.
Any other questions for Justin? No? Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
And our last item H, policy 6801, capital assets theft sensitive assets.
Do you want me to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, no, it's the one you,
So it's going from 5,000.
yep, if there's anything
Oh.
relevant that you didn't say last time, go right ahead. If
No,
not, we can
it's
just
the
zoom.
same.
Okay, cool. Are there any questions about 6801 before Diane? Okay, cool. That is all of our discussion items. Informational items do not require action or discussion by the board. The items are included in the agenda for the board to review and may be moved to the discussion items section of the board agenda by any board member. Would anyone like to move any informational items? Okay. Then in that case, you can just look at them for your information. We do have an executive session for some personnel updates. Dr. Maxwell, how long will we need this evening?
I would say 15 minutes, so we could clear out, so we'll be done by 9 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.